Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. Today I have with me Brandi Smith, who's a physical therapist and a coach, former gymnast located in Texas. And I'm very excited to talk with Brandi. She's the owner of Perfect 10 PT, and she has got some great content on Instagram to help strength and conditionings for gymnasts. Welcome to the podcast, Brandi. Tell us a little bit about your background, because I know it's very expansive, and I'm excited to hear about it, hear more about it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Laura, for having me on. I'm super excited. It's so great to have another physical therapist who is interested in helping, what I say, athletes who do weird things with their bodies, right? Like, yeah, so I'm excited to be here. And I'm really grateful for what you're doing also with the cheer population. Yeah, so for me, I'm Brandi Smith. I am a physical therapist and performance coach. In the PT world, I have a whole bunch of initials after my name because I went through a fellowship program and some other things. But my background in the real world, I grew up as a gymnast. I started when I was 3, started competing when I was 7. And I also dabbled. I was actually one of those gymnasts that was on the track for college gymnastics because that was my goal that I set. But I actually dabbled, and a lot of people don't know this. I played a lot of sports. I actually did some volleyball. I did track. I did weightlifting. I was a power lifter. They started a women's powerlifting team in my small town in Texas. And I actually, this is a secret no one knows, I actually held the Texas bench record for the 114 class for a while. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, I loved track and I loved powerlifting. I did some volleyball. I tried basketball. I am a really good free throw girl. Matter of fact, in college as a gymnast, we were a basketball game at my college and I won the free throw contest, which everybody was shocked because I can't do any other basketball. That did not work out. But I also did dance as part of gymnastics. We had ballet and jazz, and I had the traditional Russian ballet teachers to start with the long sticks. But then we had a more where I got to do ballet and jazz. And then that led me on to when I got to junior high, I started cheerleading. So I did cheer in junior high and high school. I was cheer captain in high school, and I actually was a UCA all-star cheerleader 3 years in high school. And I earned a spot to go to Australia, but I didn't take it because it was during my competition season for gymnastics. The year before that, though, I earned a spot for the New England, not New England, for the Queen's Day Parade on New Year's Day in London. And so I went and got to be a part of that. It was like 5,000 and something cheerleaders from America, and it was super fun. That was a really cool experience to actually cheer and dance in front of the Queen. So this big box at the top, the glass, and we get to stop and dance in front of her, and it was a lot of fun. It was very cold.
My sister did that. That's so cool. I think, and like I was so in awe. Like, what a great trip.
Yeah, it was the coolest trip. Like
Yeah.
it was my first trip outside of the United States. Was for cheerleading, for
Yeah.
UCA cheerleading. Again, this is stuff that I haven't actually talked about because most people ask me all about my gymnastics world, right? But yeah, so I loved cheerleading. I did fly a little bit when we had some guys on the team, but mostly I was a base because I was like, as a gymnast, I wanted control of my body. I didn't really like the idea of people tossing me up and having to land on them. I was like, I don't know about this. Give me a mat to land on.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that's my background. I, became a physical therapist and well, after having lots of injuries. So as an athlete, I dealt with fear, I dealt with some food issues, I dealt with lots of injuries. I've had 11 orthopedic surgeries during and post my career of gymnastics, all related to my sport. And I have like 7 ankle sprains on one ankle and like 3 on the other, and like big softball size ankles. Um, but yeah, so that process just all grew me towards physical therapy and performance coaching. And I didn't really realize what was happening, but I was being kind of groomed to be able to help other people. And in 2008, so I went to college, and that was not an easy go. It wasn't like a immediate got a scholarship and you're the thing. I actually lost the scholarship because of an injury and was out for 9 months. My fear that I had grew. I walked on and then got cut from the team the following year. And so my freshman, sophomore year was spent just trying to get back. And my junior year, I earned a scholarship and started on balance beam and vault. And balance beam was where I had my big fear. So it was a big thing that like I earned a scholarship to do the event that was like actually keeping me off the team. And so then by my senior year, I contributed to, so I was on one national championship type team before that, but my senior year, I contributed on beam and vault for a national championship. So fast forward, I ended up going to PT school, and I ended up in 2008 starting Perfect 10 Physical Therapy. And now I have Perfect 10 PT Academy, which, by the way, for all your viewers and listeners, I will give them my free training right now. They go to perfect10ptacademy.com, perfect10ptacademy.com, and you can get your free training today. And you can get to know a little bit of some of the tools that I've gathered over the years. I started Perfect 10 because there was a big gap in the world of medicine and the world of sport. And I began to specialize in gymnasts, cheerleaders, dancers, figure skating, parkour, yoga, circus. People do weird things with their body. and, and I've always treated other athletes as well. But ultimately, that's like the base of who I see mostly all the time, and their families. I end up seeing the parents at some point. But yeah, so I started doing all that, and I've been teaching for USA Gymnastics since 2010, for the state of Texas since 2008. And so doing sports science education for coaches and parents and athletes all across the country. But then once we had COVID, started doing it globally. So and in 2017, I got published in an international journal in sports and psychology, sports and physical therapy, in a gymnast with bilateral wrist pain. So bilateral being both of their wrists hurting. And I know we're going to probably talk about that. The wrist is one of my passions because I think there's number one, even in the world of research, it's not well researched. Like there's just not good information. And I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to doing things like cheerleading and gymnasts do, and even now more acro and dance, is put full weight through their wrist, and no one knows how to deal with it. So I'd love to talk about that. I know it's one of the topics you want to talk about today. But yeah, so in that whole experience, I've worked with everything from recreational athletes all the way up to Olympic athletes. I currently have several that are on track for the Olympics this year. We'll go to trials and see what happens. But yeah, it's been a journey, and I absolutely love it. And now one of my favorite things to do, I am teaching online with online courses because I got tired of fire hydranting people on weekend courses and saying, go make a bunch of lifestyle changes and do something different, and good luck.
Right.
And so that's not how human beings work. And so yeah, so I'm excited to be walking with people on this journey online with them and helping them make changes, because I treat very holistically. I don't, like when I say a treat, performance, injury, wellness, like the whole thing, I treat the whole person in front of me, the whole athlete in front of me, which is their mind, their emotions, their body, help them master their mind, master their emotions, and then conquer and master the body. And finding balance between all of that, as well as helping them find alignment in their purpose and how we can utilize sport to help actually figure out what is our purpose here on this earth, and like also use sport to help have these experiences through sport. Use the sport as a vehicle to experience, learn, and grow, and harness all these attributes that we can get out of our sport to become amazing humans, right? Like even just us talking now, this came from my ability to be in sport, right? Like gymnastics. I'm from small town Texas. I've been that way the whole time. There was no other college athlete came out of any of the gyms I went to. And all of those gyms, you know, at a certain point, junior high on, I had a good 4 to 5 year gap between me and the younger girls. And so when I go to meets, it was me and like a whole group of 2 other teams. And within 30 minutes, we were best buds and I was part of their team. And same thing with cheerleading, like traveling to London and stuff. We had to work. We literally were given a routine that we learned on our own on a VHS tape. Yes, I dated myself. That was a VHS tape, and it was everybody was Elvis themed. It was Elvis themed. So everybody had different, so there were different groups, and I was wanting to be in the blue group, and they gave me the yellow group, which means I got to wear mustard colored tights and mustard color skirt. But we had the like yellow, red, and blue and white UCA sweater. But you learned this video on your own. And then we had 2 practices in London with our like 500 to 1,000 girls. I don't remember. It was pretty big. Because each group, like there was more than 5,000 there total, but each group had different performances and different colors and all the things. And so in short though, like that ability to learn something and then integrate with a large group in basically 2 1-hour sessions, like that is actually a skill set that like has helped me later in life. And also like I came away with 6 really close girlfriends from that trip who happened to be from Texas because we were in the same group. Like they kind of put the Texans together. I don't know. But we were all from small towns, and we actually later that season ended up playing each other in the basketball state finals. And I was like, oh my gosh, like so it's like all of a sudden you have an instant connection or bond with people through through your sport, right? And there's so many attributes. I think we get so stuck on thinking about, did I make all-star? Am I on the Division I, the varsity team, or the freshman team, or JV? Did I get did I get the liberty to up to, whatever we're like wanting to get? We get so focused on that we miss all these things. Like for instance, if you're a flyer, clearly I didn't learn this, but if you're a flyer, you learn to trust like 4 other people underneath you. What? Like with your life.
Yeah.
like, but if you're a base, you learn to do really hard things and you'll save someone at all costs.
Yeah.
Right? Like none of my flyers ever hit their head.
Yeah.
Never. Did we fall? Oh yeah. Did I get a black eye a couple times? Yeah. But like I think these are lessons that we kind of they kind of pass by us, and we don't realize that the sport offers them. And I just think it's such a great experience. Also, just like in cheerleading or in gymnastics as well, but like in cheerleading, you really get to learn how to be a team. You have to be coordinated. You have to get along. Even though there's bickering in high school, like there's this adolescent stuff, but you have to learn how to get through that. Like it's all a process. And I just think that sport's such a beautiful place to do it. And I'm so grateful to be on that journey with many athletes across the world now. And just to help them harness as much as they can to become the best version of themselves through their sport. So that was kind of a long intro, but it's a little bit of silliness about me.
I didn't know that. I don't think I knew that you cheered. I knew you were a college gymnast, but I didn't know you cheered. And to have that UCI experience and go to London and all that, like that's incredible.
I never talk about it.
Yeah.
Because no one asks. Everyone thinks about it's so funny. I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, actually, I don't think that story's been put out anywhere because it's on my website that I was a cheerleader, but I actually don't think I even said I was a UCA cheerleader. I wish I had gone to Australia. I broke my arm, and they actually were taking me for my jumps and some of the dance, and I actually could have done that. And it was in the middle of my gymnastics season, so I didn't know I was going to break my arm.
Right.
But if I had known that I was going to break my arm, I would have just gone to Australia because I could have cheered, just not tumbled.
Yeah.
Anyways, bummer.
Other things we learn in through sport and like putting all eggs in, but yeah.
All our eggs in one basket.
Right. It's hard to like, that's the other, you don't know what's going to happen. So you can't make that, like, you can always look back, but you can't look forward, and all you can do is learn from it. And
yeah, I mean, the deadline was the deadline for the money, and I do still wish to go to Australia. I have several friends there, and I'm like, man, that one opportunity I had senior year in high school, but I'll make it back to Australia at some point.
Yeah, we'll put it out there. You will get there.
That's right.
let's dive into that the research that you did on wrists. Like, give us the the watered down version of, of what your research was on and what you looked into. Because I think it's a super common, I'm not going to say injury because I don't, if I classify injury like that's it making you sit out, but like injury really is like if your wrists are hurting, there's something going on. And so maybe you don't have to sit out, but maybe there's something going on that you need to do. And I think it's a very common injury in cheerleading between bases and tumblers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about.
Well, so just in respect of what's happening at the wrist for cheerleading with tumbling and basing, right? Like with basing, your wrist can get in some wonky positions and you've got someone weight bearing on you, and that weight is ever changing because they're balancing, right? And so there's a lot happening at the wrist at basing. Now, clearly with tumbling, a back handspring is 5 times your body weight, round off back handspring. So a standing back, which is not through your wrist, right? But a standing back is 5 to 10 times your body weight. Running, tumbling, like a round off back handspring, back tuck, or a layout or a full, that's going to be anywhere from 12 to 14 times your body weight. Elite gymnasts tumble up to like Simone Biles, 20 times their body weight, right? So this is a lot of weight going through joints that weren't necessarily even meant to be loaded, right? And so, the thing that I find really interesting, so the publication, like what was it about? It was the foundations for what we actually want to do, which eventually is a biomechanical study of the wrist and how we load and what's the most efficient way and effective way to load the wrist optimally so that the weight is transferred equally throughout all the joints, right? And there's a ton of studies done on running mechanics and feet and ankles and how the hip connects to the foot. A ton. There's all these like movement syndromes called lateral column compression, which for those of you who don't care about all that kind of words, just means that their foot is rolling in and the inside of the foot is getting stretched and the outside's getting compressed and pinched. And there's a bunch of different issues that come because of that: tendon issues, ligament issues, nerve issues, joint issues, etc. Ton of research on this, a ton. And you have, 2 arches in your foot and a ton of research on the arches and how they should be and what happens when you have a big arch and a long arch and a flat arch and all these things, right? And I could go on because there's like numerous research on the foot and barely anything exists on the wrist. And so our goal was to create, because of the world of research and how it is, you have to start with a case study and then build from there to higher level research. But it takes about 4 years on average to get published, which is what it took us. And so people need to think about that when they're reading research, it's already 4 years old.
Right.
And then by the time it's trickled into the schools, it's probably already 10 years old. So it's an interesting, and then by the time it trickles into the actual performance world, it's at least 10 years old, right? And so it's kind of interesting. We need to make this a little less, it's ridiculous, the red tape. It needs to be a little less crazy. But what the take home from that was that I actually got the athlete out of pain with doing very minimal to the wrist. So the take home is that actually what affects the wrist and how we put weight on it is your central stability system, your core per se, and your shoulder blades, what's happening at the shoulder blades and how strong those are. And it's more about a stable mobility. I call it stable mobility because you need to be able to move them upwardly. If they're not moving upwardly and they're moving downwardly a lot, because you've got bad posture, you're rounding your shoulders all the time, then you're not going to be able to load your wrist very well. Matter of fact, that posture, the cell phone posture, the thing that happens because we're all in school and we're all doing so much cell phone devices, is that actually will actually promote more weight going through your wrist when you're tumbling, and it limits your ability to open your shoulders all the way, which is not something you want to be able to open your shoulders all the way to set for a back tuck or even to get open for a back handspring. So the take home is that if you work on your central stability, your core, your shoulder blades, that takes a bunch of load off the wrist and you can get out of pain pretty quickly. Then the secondary and third things that we worked on was some movement patterns and some common imbalances that I find in the wrist. And so I defined in the article something called radial column compression syndrome, which is just the same thing as that lateral column compression syndrome that I said. And then people who don't care about anatomy, no worries. All it means is that when you put weight through your wrist, you're overloading the thumb side of your wrist. and you're stretching the outside of your wrist. And so it comes along with a whole movement pattern. Usually their elbows are hyperextended, usually what I call their smiley faces, the little antecubital fossa. So I can't have this nice little sweater on, but this line right here, usually it's pointed forward and they're hyperextending their elbows. Sometimes they have their wrist turned out, sometimes they're forward, but there's a big, huge collapse and a bunch of creasing happening on the thumb side. Got lots of bracelets on the thumb side of the wrist instead of being even across. And then it comes with the fact that people collapse their arches.
Mhm.
What? Yes,
You
you
know.
have arches in your wrist, and there's 3 of them. And there's one that comes across here, one that comes across here, and one that comes across here. And in short, I've even worked with circus people and hand balancers who believe that the best way to balance is to flatten their arches. And they actually try to get as much surface area on their hand as possible. But in reality, you are actually overloading certain parts of your wrist, and you have all these little bones in there. And if you're a growing athlete, which is also part of the case study, if you overload on this thumb side of the wrist, there's something called the radius, which is right here. It's the biggest bone that you have in your wrist. And it has a really big growth plate right here. And what will happen is you'll overload that growth plate so much that it becomes irritated and unhappy. And on an x-ray, instead of being a nice clean little line, it'll become jaggedy. And they call that apophysitis, right? And over time, that growth plate can either fracture or separate, which then can create some growing issues where that bone will not grow as long as the outside bone on your pinky side. And now all of a sudden, this bone is longer than this one, something called ulnar variance. But this bone is longer than this one. And now you're really loading bad. And so that being said, like, these are all preventable things. Matter of fact, they've even named that radial apophysitis, they've named it gymnast wrist, right? Like that's the name because so many gymnasts get it.
Yeah.
And I think when I go in the gym and when I think about myself as an athlete, I thought wrist pain was normal. And then we just threw on these little braces with no understanding of what we were doing. And we would wear just like these little like round little things that just squeezed
Yeah.
it or taped our wrist up
Yeah.
like that. And we now know in the world of research that has been done by there's a woman named Wendy Howard. She's the inventor of wrist widgets, which is one of the braces I recommend. So I recommend wrist widgets and Easy Wrap Pros. They're very different. I recommend them for different reasons. Kind of depends on what's going on with the athlete. Oh my goodness. Well, I thought, there it is. I was like, I thought I had an example. I do. So the wrist widget is just a very simple brace that has a little window in it. And what's super cool about it is that they found that if you respect, so you have this joint right here where that bone comes here, if you cross that joint and squeeze it and give compression, you actually get decreased grip strength, increased pain, and decreased weight bearing tolerance. And so it's quite interesting. All those braces that come across through here that people use are just putting tape across there, and they're actually decreasing their weight bearing tolerance. I have tested people, and then the standardized like tiger paw that people like to use. I may have one. I think we put it away. It's in my like travel kit. But the tiger paw does the exact same thing. I have tested thousands of athletes at this point on a weight bearing test, and I will have athletes that with the tiger paw take less weight than they do with nothing.
Oh, wow.
They take less weight before they have pain with the tiger paw than they do with nothing. And the other thing that's super interesting is that then we'll put the wrist widget on and they'll get anywhere from 30 to 40, 50 pounds, sometimes 100 pounds more just with this compared to their nothing. And then we'll put the easy wraps on and it's the same thing. They'll get like 100 pounds or more better. Sometimes, I mean, if it's a very flared up wrist, it may only be 40 or 50 pounds more. But the point is that it's significantly more than if they had nothing. And it's definitely totally different than the tiger paw. And so what it is that the tiger paw mechanically goes right here and it compresses It blocks the wrist. I have pictures of this on my Instagram, by the way. But it blocks the wrist and it actually collapses the arches more. And that, so it's squeezing that joint that we know will decrease in our weight bearing tolerance and increase our pain. It's collapsing the 3 arches that we have. And so it's no good. I absolutely despise the Tiger Ball,
Yeah.
and I don't recommend anyone wasting their money on it in reality. But the wrist widget, on the other hand, it's super simple little wrist brace, and you just put it on so that the thicker part here is at the bottom, and your window, most importantly, the window goes where those bones are, right? The big bump on your bone. And then you just wear it snug like you would a tennis shoe. You don't want to tie it super tight. Some athletes tie things too tight because they think they have to, but that's actually not helpful with the wrist widget. So it's a very simple brace with a very powerful impact. The only thing I can suggest is have like some kind of bag, a zipper bag or something like that, that you store these in, because they're tiny and they have little Velcro on them and they do walk away sometimes.
Yeah.
We all know what that's like in a
Yep.
gym bag
Yeah.
and with all of our gear and our little outfit.
Yeah.
The other brace though I recommend that is great for if you're a cheerleader and you have a lot of basic, like you're basing a ton, or you're basing with an athlete that's just really constantly working you, you may find that this is very helpful. You can also try this one, but you may find that you like this. And if you're in acute flare up and you have already flared up your growth plate and you're still needing to tumble on your return, I'll recommend this to help change your mechanics while you wean yourself out of it, and eventually wean yourself out of this as well. Now, some of my cheerleaders love the wrist widget and will continue to base with the wrist widget. And you can get these in all different colors. I like the black because I can show it off, right? But they have a tan. They have a tan one. This is just good for like demo, right?
Yeah.
You can see it very well. But the easy wrap, so I do a whole slew of things on this easy wrap stuff, but the easy wrap has, what's special about it is it just does the opposite of a tiger paw. It actually has a little pad. So it's just like in the foot, we put orthotics to help people, right? To support their arch.
Yeah.
So they have done this. You create there's a little pad and you put it here. And I have a whole video and a whole slew of stuff on how to put this on. But you just kind of snug it up. The first time you set it up, it's a little challenging, but they can reach out if they'd like to have that, but I have some videos of it. So you just kind of put it here and then you're gonna do the pinky side first. I'm just gonna move the pinky side first. This is really hard to do in this position. And then I do the thumb side, and then I'm gonna cinch it up. And I just make it snug. And so this is not, I usually do it on my lap, but you want this here. And then this actually should come a little bit lower. I was usually in my lap, but you can adjust it. It's much more adjustable. It comes in 2 pieces that come apart. So
Oh.
it's much more adjustable than the other. It's not perfect in the fact that it does go over this joint. Wendy Howard, the inventor of the wrist widget, and I have talked about it. It does go over this joint, but it's the best we have to help prevent excessive extension. So if we have someone that has really not good wrist control, and they're either basing or they're tumbling and their wrist just keeps going into excessive extension, this will help them with that and help retrain their movement pattern until they can get out of them.
What
Really,
is that a metal stay on the on the Palmer side there on the
no, it's just a pad. No, there's
no.
no metal in it. The only metal is this little metal piece
Yeah.
to the loop. But no, this is just a pad. It's just a pad.
Awesome.
And it's just leather.
Yeah.
Yeah. So easy wraps and wrist widgets. Now you can get both of these. I don't get money from this, by the way, but you can get both of them. The most convenient place with the lowest shipping, because believe it or not, the shipping's more here with the easy wrap, is DGS Gym Supply, Dairy's Gym Supply. They carry them. And actually, because I lecture so much and they got tired of trying to figure out for people, they said, just search Brandi and you'll get the easy wraps.
I
So
know.
if you search Brandi on their website, you
Yeah.
get the easy wrap phrase. Isn't that silly? But easy wrap won't wholesale these to me. Isn't that funny? Anyways, but yeah, DGS, I don't get anything from them. They're a great family owned business, but ultimately they're cheaper. They have more cost effective shipping, and the cost of the product is the cost of the product basically. So so those are the bracing that I recommend to help with improving your loading and get yourself out of pain, because this is the other part. So you said something like about, well, I don't know if I'd say it's an injury, but they have pain.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, what is pain? This is part of like therapeutic neuroscience
Right.
education that I do, part of what I do. What is pain? Well, pain is information. So we don't have pain fibers anywhere in our body. We just have fibers that we have receptors that tell us where we are in space. They tell us that we've moved, like those are sensors. But then we also have receptors that feel pressure, or we have receptors that sense inflammation, right? And so if I'm having pain in my wrist, if it's a one-time thing, fine, probably just a weird tweak, right? But if every time I do a bridge, or every time I do a round off back handspring, or every time I do a back handspring, I have pain, my brain is telling me something. It's saying, I don't like something. And in my experience, it's not what you're doing, it's not the back handspring, it's how you're doing it.
Mhm.
So there's a couple components. One is that if your hips are dropping while your hands are hitting, you're increasing your impact and losing and bleeding out power into your wrist when you hit the ground. So mechanically, you're actually impacting the ground and the force is going through your wrist joint. And you do that enough times, you start to create inflammation and problems. Now, if you collapsing your arch, so the trajectory thing, that's very important. So some of that may be a bad technique, like you don't turn over on your round off, you don't have a good hurdle, like there could be a technique issue, a strength issue. But the other issue is how you load your wrist. And do you have full wrist range of motion? Are you imbalanced, right? So I like to look at the body as like a circus tent with a bunch of lines on every side. And if I have a bunch of 100-pound billies on every side, my tent pole is happy. But if I have an 800-pound bubba on one side and a 100-pound billy on the other, my pole is going to lean to the bubba. Well, if that happens, and commonly happens in the wrist, where the finger extensors, the muscles that lift up my fingers, get tighter and overactive over the wrist extensors, the muscles that extend my wrist, and all of that is working over these muscles that make up my arch, then I'm going to collapse my arch when I put weight through it. And so I have a few really simple exercises that we could go through if you like, on how to kind of keep a healthy wrist. Would you like me to go ahead and
Yes.
go through a few of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So one of the biggest exercises, and people laugh, but it's so doggone powerful. Literally you can increase your range by 20 to 30 degrees by doing just a set of 20 of these. So this is a like big bang for your buck exercise. So with those muscles being kind of tight, what we can do is we can figure out how tight is yours. So you can do this yourself. So if you want to try, Laura, so what you can do is you take your fingers and curl them in, and take your thumb and go across. And then I want you to just slowly curl your wrist down until you notice that your fingers start to pop out of your hand. So you come back, so come back up from the beginning and then just curl, 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 and you'll notice that they start to just kind of let off on your hand. They're not able to be in there that tight. So I think you're right around 15 or so. You use your hands a lot, right?
Yeah.
So now take your fingers straight and do the same movement. All the way, as far as it'll go. Yeah, so you're a little tight there too. That's probably about 60 or something, or 50 maybe. But we want it to be around 60, 70, somewhere in there, right? So, but the key though is that this should be equal to this.
Oh.
And that's the when there's a problem. So if when you go down with your fingers down in, your finger extensors, the one that move up, are tighter or more relatively stiff than your wrist extensors that come up. So we're just looking at the stiffness of them, right? So super quick, easy way to look at it. And then once you find like, oh yeah, that's pretty tight, when my fingers start coming out, you just retrain it. So you find the pokey part here on your pinky side, which is called the pisiform, but there's a little pokey ball. And you use your index finger and then the fingers come across. And then you take your thumb and you go down below the bones here. And then all you're gonna do is do what I call a lift. So you can see I can just squeeze. So I'm basically pinching my fingers and thumb together to give a little lift. Because what happens with this imbalance is this little row of bones, we call them proximal row of the carpal bones, but it's this first row of bones, it will drop forward. And when it drops forward, your arches collapse when you go to put weight on it. And so when people do typical wrist stretching, which by the way, we're going to talk about how to do it better. But when people do a typical wrist stretching where they actually just like put their wrist down and lean forward, and then they go back and they go this way, what tends to happen is they're shoving that row of bones further down. And they're actually just stretching their joint capsule and not their muscles. They're not achieving what they want. So super cool. Find your pokey part, fingers across, thumb goes in the back. You do a little lift to get those bones in their happy place. Curl the fingers in, thumb across, and then all you're going to do is do little nods with your wrist. But as you nod, you'll notice that those row of bones where your index finger is, your pointer finger, it's going to want to pop into your pointer finger. So give a good amount of resistance. You can see I'm pushing pretty hard. So give a good amount of resistance while you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now curl it and punch out. So when you're here curling, you'll feel it all through here. But when you punch out, you'll feel it come up through here. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, punch. 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 Good. So now recheck. So you're here. And how far can you go?
Oh, it's a lot farther.
Yeah, that's a lot farther. You went from 15 to like maybe 35, 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, super powerful. Now, did I change the length of your muscles? This is another argument about stretching, right? That's a whole other thing, because really it's a neuromuscular thing. It's how is my brain firing to my body, and what does my brain think is the most efficient way, which is not always efficient,
Right.
to be working. So all we're doing is resetting. So I like a nice little set of five punch, doing 4 to 5 times. 25 of them, both wrists, before as part of your warm-up. And then also doing them if you're doing a lot of basing or a lot of tumbling, when you're in the side, when you're just waiting in line, do some punches. They're easy to do in the car. They're easy to do at school. So I love that because it's really powerful. The next piece is that with your wrist stretching you're already doing, just do the lift. Finger across, thumb here, do the lift, and then, whoops, and then you can do your stretching over, and you're stretching to this side and the stretching this way, right? So you just keep doing the lift. So you do have to do one wrist at a time, but you're going to be totally shocked at the difference of what happens. The other simplest thing, everybody thinks that, you should do just like the weights in all the different directions. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good exercise. However, do the lift. Because if I'm training my wrist flat like this and I'm doing all these wrist stuff there, I'm just training the movement imbalance. I'm just training the bubbas,
Yeah.
and I'm not getting the billies, right? So if you do the little lift and then you add your little 2-3 pound weight and you do the ups and downs, you do the rotations, you do the nodding, that's all great. It's just now you have the joints in a better position. One thing I will say though, that also people sometimes miss is, especially with extension, what commonly happens, especially with someone who's basing or they tend to overload the inside of their wrist when they tumble, is when they go to do their wrist extensions, they'll come this way. So notice that my pointer finger will come towards my thumb side of my arm. That's a dominant extensor carpi radialis brevis. So it's an imbalance where the bubba works too hard. So we want Billy to work. So what I'll have people do is I'll have them do the lift with the second finger, not the first one. And then I'll have them use their pointer finger to help guide them to go straight up. And then I'll say, can you hold it there? And often what you'll see is they'll go up, they let go and drop because they don't know how to hold the end range of extension. And it's all those billies just haven't been working. So if I can give some super simple stuff, I would do those things. Like I would just make sure you have your lift, do all your stretching. This is the punching one, is a super powerful one. And then I would also, with the wrist extension, make sure that they're not going to the thumb side, but that you're going straight up. And you're going to find quite a bit of a difference just by doing all of that. Now, I don't know if we have time. I think we do. I have one more series of exercises with a gripper that we didn't actually, so I know you were talking to me, I lead every Wednesday a free performance webinar, which you guys can join. If you go to my free training and get the free training, on that email that you get with the free training, you can find the link for my free webinars on Wednesday. But the free training is at perfect10ptacademy.com. It's for all of you guys today. And but you can also find the link to my free Wednesday webinars where we come in, and sometimes it's me. So this week it's me and Doc Allison Arnold, who is a sports psychologist with USA Gymnastics. She's worked with Olympians since 2000. She and I are buddies. She helped me as an athlete get over my fear, and we have since presented and worked together with tons of athletes over the years. So she's coming in this week. Sometimes we have a nutritionist. We have several nutritionists that work with me on my Invincible Athlete program, which is one of my online courses. And we have Yuka Sagoria. We have like a neural performance coach. We have biomechanics. We have choreographers. We have like kind of just the slew of performance people coming in, and it's a free 1 hour. And sometimes you get to just ask us questions. Sometimes we have a little topic we want to cover. But a lot of times it's just ask us questions. So you get like to pick the brains of experts and it's pretty awesome. But yeah, so if you go to the perfect10ptacademy.com today, you can get in your email with all your access codes and everything. You can get the link to my free webinars as well. And I was talking about that because you said you wanted to talk about so I did a 3-part series on the wrist. That was one of those times where we decided to pick a topic, and it was a big topic. So we unpacked it for 3 weeks, 1 hour each week, and people loved it. We went from the basics of wrist care and injury prevention, and getting out of pain, to to bracing. We talked about bracing, and how to load. And then we went to the more advanced stuff when it comes to actual skill specific training, and getting your weight through it. So I do all kinds of fun things with bands, which I think that's how you found me, right?
It is. Yep. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do a lot of fun things with 2/8 bands, which are on my Instagram profile at perfect10pt. That's my Instagram handle is perfect10pt, and the number 10, perfect number 10pt. And yeah, so I wrap the bands in various ways in order to resist the entire kinetic chain, the entire body at the same time, to help the athletes find their biomechanical alignment, to help them find where they need to be, help them get stronger in all those billies, and prevent the bubbas from working too hard, the way that I wrap the band. We can save that for another time if you want me to come back or something. But I really quickly want to show you, because this is something we did not cover in my wrist free webinar. So you guys are getting it. I was like, oh my gosh, we didn't actually cover that. So you just get a gripper that's an adjustable gripper. I actually have a whole wrist kit that I get off of Amazon for like 16 bucks. It has like little bands in it. It has gripper balls, and it has this thing in it. So, but you can adjust it. It says from 10 to 40 kilograms. I don't know, but you can adjust it. So really quickly, you also need a 2-pound bag of pinto beans. And so what you do is you take the beans and you place them on your head. Why are we doing this? Because posture matters.
Yeah.
Where it goes back to my research study, where my head and my spine is and where my shoulder blades are going to matter with my ability to raise my arm overhead. Whereas if I'm here, I cannot raise my arm up. I'm actually limited by the rib cage. So if I put 2-pound bag of pinto beans on my head and I say, okay, I want you to come up into the beans, now all of a sudden my shoulder blades are already in a better position and I can go all the way up. So that's step 1. Step 2, you get your gripper and you always squeeze it and make sure it's connected. Now I learned this and kind of modified it from one of my mentors, Anthony Lowe. He's the physio detective, but I have to talk about it because he's the one who taught me this. So you keep it clamped the whole time. So you're here, nice and tall into your beans. You clamp it at the bottom. See if I can get you guys to see my whole body here. All right, so you clamp it at your bottom, at your side, and you're going to raise it up to here in front of you. Okay, and so once I'm up in front, I'm going to actually just go in and out, in and out. And I have to keep my elbows straight. So you're going to do 3 to 5 of everything. And then I come down. And then I come up again and I go down. And I'm gonna rotate my palm down. I'm gonna go up and down. And again, I have to keep my elbow straight. Athletes will want to like bend their elbow. You have to keep it straight. And then you come down 3 to 5. Then I go here and I grip. And now I'm going to nod up and down, keeping it gripped. And then we're going to grip it and we're going to rotate just the elbow. So sometimes someone has to hold above their elbow, so they move just their elbow. What a lot of athletes do is they move their whole arm, right?
Yeah.
So you want to grip it and move just the elbow 3 to 5 times. And then you come down. Then you're going to grip it and you're going to move the whole arm inside the shoulder, like a hot dog roller at 7-Eleven, right? So I'm going to do a hot dog roller at 7-Eleven and rotate it. And you're going to do 3 to 5 of those. Then you're going to grip it at the bottom. Palm is facing down. You're going to raise all the way up. Now, when you raise up, I want you to imagine that your arm ends between your shoulder blades so that we're moving everything up. So I'm going to squeeze, come up into my beans, and I'm just going to raise my arm all the way up. And then I'm going to rotate my arm back, bend my elbow, rotate my arm forward, come down. So I squeeze at the bottom, palm stays down. At the top, rotate the palm back, bend the elbow, rotate the palm forward, and come down. 3 to 5 of those. Now, last one, you squeeze, and now you're going to rotate palm up at the bottom, come up, bend the elbow here, come down, rotate at the bottom. Squeeze, rotate at the bottom, come up, bend, straighten, come down, rotate the bottom. Again, you do 3 to 5 of these, and you have to keep it squeezed the entire time. And this exercise can be super powerful for getting in the strength that's needed and the entire chain, that kinetic chain that needs to happen. So these are a couple of basic exercises. This is not, we didn't get to cover how to load the wrist, like how to actually put weight through it. Maybe we can do that another time. Maybe we can do the bands another time. But I hope this helps people, because wrist pain is not normal. It's information.
Yeah.
And it probably means that there's a biomechanical thing happening and you've overloaded something. And so we need to figure out what you're doing that is causing it. And it's not the what, it's the how.
Right.
How you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so these are just a few basic exercises to help balance everything out that I find really helpful for most people. So
This is super helpful, Brandi. I think this was amazing. Are your webinars recorded? Like, can people go back and watch them?
Well, you have to register.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you register and you can't make it, then yes, we can send recordings. You can always just shoot us a message. But if you haven't registered, then no. But here's the other thing is I give away free things like handouts and videos and all kinds of stuff. And you have to show up for those. Those we don't email.
Yeah.
But if you attend the webinar, yes, we email everything out that I give out. And if you register and you want a recording, you just have to send us an email, but you have to be registered for it. Otherwise, yeah, we don't send out the recordings to everyone.
Yeah. Makes sense. That's
yeah. We have to know who we're sending to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This was incredible. I love, I think you've got some amazing and different exercises that are not just your standard, and like really focusing on form. The pinto beans, I'm going to use that. Like
this is magical for posture.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
I use pinto beans for everything. I use it for all kinds of things. Like I've got like 30 of these when I work workshops.
Yeah.
And whenever COVID hit, I was like, don't worry, I have beans. No, but I'm serious. Most gyms should have a set of 10 in just a laundry basket or a little basket.
Yeah.
Because you can change someone's posture almost instantly. And if you want to work on just cheer moves, right? You want to work on how, because what'll happen is they'll do this, right? Like when they go into, so if you can use the beans, it changes things instantly. It's pretty amazing.
And it's so much less cheap than buying a 40-pound kettlebell, or that is also beneficial, but
yeah, that's a different benefit. But yeah, it's a low on the totem pole investment that will actually give you a big bang for your buck. So yeah, I love them. But yeah, for everyone who's listening, for today only, for all of you guys, because I love Laura and I love what she's doing with cheer PT and cheer athletics. I'm giving everyone my free training, perfect10ptacademy.com. You go to perfect10ptacademy.com. You can get your free training. You'll get the links to my free webinars. Yeah, join in, and I look forward to seeing all you guys and helping as many of you guys as I can.
That's awesome. And to reach you, the Perfect 10 Academy is the website. Is that and then Instagram, Perfect 10 PT.
Yeah.
So you can find all that information. We'll have that in the show notes also.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so
So
much.
Instagram, perfect 10, the number 10 PT,
Yeah.
and to reach me and find me, perfect 10 ptacademy.com. Yeah.
And we'll have that all listed for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for
Thanks for
having me,
being
Laura.
here.
I love what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Same here. Thanks for joining us, guys. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out. Take life one step at a time. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day. Have a good one.